Our history, our past, does not come with a single truth. As new evidence is available or new interpretation is presented, our perspectives change and we look at the past in new ways, reinterpret events, discover new meaning within them, and pose new questions. There is no one past, there are many. History is not singular, it is multiple. As a result, historians don't always speak with one single voice. Through this presentation, we will look at the various developments in the writing about India's past. Since earliest times, societies tried to transfer to the next generations some aspects of their past through stories, drama, art, sculpture, festivals. These were mainly in oral and pictorial form or as performances. Later we have evidence where some kings commissioned writers and artists to record their life so that people revere them. Since about 1,000 years, travelers from distant lands wrote about what they saw during their travels, leaving behind texts. But the idea of looking at the past, looking for evidence to support the interpretation, emerged during the age of reason. Even here, the rigor to scientifically analyze and present evidence was largely absent. Gradually, the writing of history based on evidence started taking root in the Western world that began interacting with other societies. The need to record how the other lived and make comparison was one of the motivations. While recording about certain regions of Indian subcontinent are available from the 12th century along with travelogues, evidence based history writing was not present until the 18th century. Largely, this may be because the subcontinent was ruled by different kings and dynasties whose control over the region was often short lived. There was no sense of looking at ourselves as people of one nation. It is the Europeans who began looking at India as a nation, desirous of controlling the land and its people. They felt the need to organize the diverse cultures that shared commonality but were also distinct. They felt the need to give an explanation of how we came to become a certain kind of people. Let us see how the exercise of writing of our past took shape. Europeans were curious about the Eastern world, the Orient. They began looking for different sources and were impressed to find the ancient text. These Europeans, the Orientalists, have left a deep mark on how our past is viewed. The interpreters of these texts were Indian men from upper castes who were able to read Sanskrit. These men had a sense of affinity to the ancient texts that rationalized the caste system. They felt a certain loss of power with spread of Muslim rule and coming of the Europeans. They interpreted Sanskrit texts with a sense of pride about their past and communicated their sense of past glory to the Orientalists. Based on such interpretations of Brahminical texts, the Orientalists created an image of ancient India as its golden age, which withered away due to the coming of the outsiders, the Muslims. By the early 1800s, the British East India Company had taken hold over large parts of the Indian subcontinent. Ironically, their own society had undergone civilizational change, where values of equality, liberty, fraternity were being upheld. So, while the British in India exploited Indians, they looked at themselves as progressive, liberated people and Indians as backward, ridden in tradition and unjust to their own countrymen. By doing this, they could justify their rule as that necessary for India's progress and as an act of liberation of Indian society. India, according to them, depicted the age of darkness, constrained by social institutions such as caste, village communities and oriental despotism. Its people ruled by self-serving, narrow-minded rulers. These so-called liberals rejected the ideal image of India created by the Orientalists and used the same sources of texts to criticize the continent's past. They also depicted the Muslim rulers who had opposed them the most as foreigners. They devised a new framework to look at India's past, divided in three phases: Hindu, Muslim and British. As the British gained political control over the subcontinent, people began resisting the exploitative rule. While the earliest of those who resisted the British were peasants and forest dwellers, Western educated Indian men exposed to the ideals of justice began to challenge the British powers. As the nationalist movement took shape, its leaders rejected the liberals' way of looking at India. They borrowed the image of the Golden Age from the Orientalists and used that as the motive for the nationalist movement to recreate the bygone glory. The nationalist histories did not feel the need to face the internal contradictions of caste, class and gender, and in fact presented India as a unified society essential for nation making. The nationalist histories referred to the interpretation of India's past constructed by the British to borrow from the Orientalists and reject the liberal. After independence, while professional evidence based history writing grew and became robust, school histories tended to avoid events in immediate past, particularly the communal violence and the partition of India. They carried on in the same lines as the nationalists. They revised the periodization imposed by the liberals as ancient Hindu, medieval Muslim, modern British onward. In the 1950s, there came a change in looking at histories of regions, communities and castes. Influenced by some scholars in the Cambridge University, emerged regional and personality centered histories, but they largely ignored sources of evidence which were not in favor of the imperial rulers. While the central government curriculum and textbooks talked about unified and syncretic culture, celebrating diversity, textbooks in many states projected regional events and figures, often for having fought against the Muslim rulers. This situation largely continues to prevail even today. Again, in professional history writing emerged new categories of looking at the past, focusing on history of workers and changes in the language source. Instead of looking at events centered around dynasties, scholars like D.D. Kosambi began asking questions like, how did ordinary people, laboring sections and the poor live in a certain period? What was their relationship with modes of production? Did they have control over the resources and means of production? To investigate this, they went beyond the Sanskrit texts and brought into focus Buddhist texts written in Pali, Ardhamagadhi, Prakrit, reinterpreting the past events. Due to this change, a significant understanding was derived that ancient India was not merely Hindu, but was also Buddhist, Jain and even non-believers. The events in the United States of America brought another change in the practice of professional history. The civil rights movement for justice to African Americans, anti-Vietnam War movement, the feminist movement brought into focus issues of human rights, justice and the need to look at people who were at the pit of social hierarchy, the field of subaltern studies. Subaltern means the one who has been oppressed over centuries and pushed to the bottom of the social order. This impacted history writing in India in dramatic way and the focus shifted to different marginalized groups, the tribals, Dalits, peasants, workers and how they lived in the past. The subaltern histories also busted the myth of the Golden Age and brought forth the oppression of caste and patriarchy. The mid-70s also gave rise to writing about history of women. This was a major shift in perspective. Till then, barring stray figures, women were largely absent from the way historians looked at the past. Even the subaltern point of view remained male-centered, amalgamating and subsuming women as a subtext, taking them for granted. The acceptance that gender changes the way life shapes up was not common. Women make up half the population, have a different relationship with the means of production, contribute more than substantial part of labor and have their own way of making culture began to be recognized. Another contribution of women's history is to bring sexuality into the framework. The understanding that patriarchy controls women's sexuality via religion, imposing restrictions over their freedoms, became sharper with the development of women's history. Women are oppressed, but have not always been passive, that they have found their distinct ways of rebellion within the system made historians look at the past events afresh. Significant presence of women in religious movements like Jainism, Buddhism or Sangama era literature and later in the poet saints from 11th century onward made scholars look at how women use the confines of religion, subverting it to challenge to free themselves from dominant patriarchal boundaries. Again, there was a need to recognize new source of evidence. Since women were barred from education with the exception of a few, they have not left many written texts behind, barring poems by Buddhist bhikkhunis. Thus, poems, bhajans, songs, and rituals, mainly oral sources, are used as historical evidence, corroborating them with scientific methods. In fact, silence of women and subaltern voices also represents their lack of power. Thus, so far was our journey to understand how history writing in India has changed. As we saw, there are more than one perspective to look at the past. As perspectives changed and as professional history writing developed, there is an acceptance that there are multiple ways of looking at the same past. That is, there are multiple histories.